It would be done by taking the world over human management, new management. New management will be guided by reason, and being guided by reason will bring order to chaos. We will make the world more hospitable to human race as it used to be before. And therefore, the old inherited structures must be dissolved, taken apart, dismantled, and replaced by the structures which were designed purposefully under dictate of reason. Today it's a different story. We are not so much are continuing melting the solids because we like solids to be more solid than they are. On the contrary, the slogan of the day, as you know, is flexibility. Flexibility, in translation into ordinary human language, means spinelessness. You are accepting everything. You are not sticking to anything excessively. The problem, the task, is not so much fixing the future by introducing stable structures which will prevent further change, but on the contrary, what is with our awareness, or simply by default, which is guiding our actions, is the fear of fixing, fear of mortgaging the future, fear of not being able to grasp the new opportunities which the future may bring, simply because we are tied up by previously taken obligations, commitments, structures which determine the constraints imposed on our life. That is the difference between liquid modernity and solid modernity. How Richard Sennett, one of the most interesting and influential contemporary sociologists, observed today perfectly viable organizations are now gutted just to prove their ongoing viability. In order to prove that you are valid, viable, that your way of doing things should be retained, you need to demonstrate that you can simply take yourself apart and replace it with something else. It's just not only about the way in which big companies are organized, which are today, which are in constant change, in constant making people redundant, restructuring, outsourcing, contracting out, subsidiarizing, all this new world created in latest decades, 1 or 2 decades, not previously existing in any language, demonstrates the new spiritual attitude, so to speak, the new Weltanschauung, as the Germans would say, of the organization. But it's not just the question of the organization. It goes down to the very substance of contemporary individual life. You know very well that your mastery over your identity today is mostly understood by you, even if you not articulate it and not confess of it in public. I am in control of myself if I can become at will somebody else. And not only you think like that, and you practice it, because whoever is on your Facebook probably has several identities at the same time, depending with whom he or she is corresponding. So the question of being flexible, of being not determined, finally, to keeping your options open, not mortgaging the future. Now, that is the substance also of life at the level of what Anthony Giddens calls life politics, not just the politics of governments, not politics of big companies, but politics of individuals who individually using their own talents, their own skills, their own reason, their own resources, try to shape the course of their own life. On this level, on individual level, on the level of life of everybody sitting here in this room. That hasn't changed, ladies and gentlemen, but since I committed to this book, Liquid Modernity, I was overwhelmed by doubts. What is it really, this new way of life, which I tried a moment ago briefly describe? Is it a new era which we entered, and from now on the world is likely to remain like that, or is it just a period of transition? We have lost one kind of idea of order, which I call the hard modernity or hardware modernity, unlike the software modernity which we are living now. But or whether it is only a transition from that kind of order to a new one which haven't emerged yet. And the first thing I wanted to tell you is that I came to the conclusion that also, mind you, I'm not swearing that I'm right. It is just temporary settlement, temporary statement, my present view. Well, I don't know whether I will be again in Aarhus speaking, but I'm a very old man. But in case I do, I can't guarantee that I won't change my mind. Anyway, at the moment, my idea is that we live in a period of interregnum. What is interregnum? There was Titus Livius, one of the first historians of ancient Rome, who wrote this history of early Rome, partly mythological history, ab urbe condita, from the moment the city was built, was created, and he introduced the concept of interregnum. What he told us is that the first king of Rome, Romulus, ruled Rome for 37 years. Now, at that time, 37 years was the average length of human life. People lived not that long as we do. 37, which means that the moment Romulus died, most of the people living in Rome never experienced a world which did not contain Romulus. Very much like your younger brothers and sisters cannot imagine the world which didn't contain Facebook. Now, the Romans could not imagine a world which didn't contain Romulus. Romulus, the only source, the only known source of everything, of prescription, of command, of advice, of distinction between right and wrong, all laws were coming from the same source. Therefore, when he died, and allegedly, according to legend, he didn't die but went straight to the heaven. Anyway, when he disappeared from view, there was a panic in Rome because no one knew what to do. They were used to receive orders of the day from the king of Rome, but he was not there any longer. And that lasted for not a very long time, because a year or so after, the next king, Numa, was appointed, and new source of authority, reliable, trustworthy source, was in position. Now, that was the first interregnum known in history, with all its consequences. Now, Antonio Gramsci, the great Italian philosopher, dug up this notion from ancient Rome in order to name by this name the time in which he wrote. In this sense, he was in fact, looking retrospectively, a prophesizing person. He actually predicted the coming of the situation which he thought already existing, or at least arising, but we are witnessing today. He redefined, he updated the concept of interregnum. It is not the question of one king replacing another, or one political party in parliament replacing another. It is much deeper than that. The substance of the spiritual state of interregnum is that the ways of doing things which we deployed so far don't work any longer. They are no longer effective. But the new ways, which would be free from this misdemeanor, so to speak, of the old ways of doing things, have not yet been invented. At best, they are somewhere on the drawing board. Perhaps someone somewhere thinks about them, but we are not aware of that. They are not in place. They are not in operation. The old ways don't work. The new ways have not been invented. That is the state of uncertainty in which we are placed today. That's what I'm suggesting you. And as in all states of interregnum, we know fairly well. If pressed, we could even respond in a reasonable way what we have left behind, what is not working any longer. But we have no inkling where to we are moving from here. Now, quite a lot of things have changed since I composed this book, Liquid Modernity, which made me to think in terms of interregnum. This suspension in a void, in a sense, knowing from where we are coming, but not knowing where to we are going. When I worked on Liquid Modernity, it was just after the collapse of the communist empire. You learned from history, you didn't experience it personally, but there was a period after the Second World War, lasting 40 years or so, when the globe was divided between two world empires, world powers. One was America and the camp of democracy, the other was the Soviet camp. And in 1990s, the dominant opinion was that the competitor disappeared, the way of life represented by the United States and the world allied to it is now the only way of life which will become dominant. The world empire. The world empire. Now, the experiences at the very beginning of 21st century, the military expeditions to Iraq and Afghanistan, which brought, in fact, the defeat of the war plans undertaken by this only world empire, showed a new situation emerging. There was signaled that under present conditions, the one power which rules the global affairs is simply unthinkable. Militarily, there was no question of American superiority. No question of American superiority. The United States of America spent on weapons as much as the 25 states next in hierarchy spent together. There is no other military power which can actually measure its force with the United States of America. Economically, it is not so clear any longer, as you know, because, well, there are China, India, Brazil, South Africa, ever new centers of economic power are emerging, and America, as the last collapse of credit, the catastrophe, financial catastrophe showed, is in a lot of trouble trying to maintain its economic position. But there is still a third element here, which was not less visible in previous times. Joseph Nye, I suggest to you to read his book about the soft power. He is the person who coined the idea of soft power. There are two kinds of power he gathered from the recent experience. One is hard power, and it is divided into two kinds. One kind is military power, coercion simply by physical force, forcing you to do what you are told to do. And the other is economic power, also hard power, putting you in a condition in which you have to accept a rubbish job, an inferior job you wouldn't like to perform, or die in hunger, or be, kicked out from good society, and so on. So both kinds operate through coercion. People are forced to do what the forcing power wants them to be done. But, says Joseph Nye, the military and economic power is already insufficient in contemporary world to gain domination, to gain a real command over what's going on. There is the third power, which is soft power, which comes to the fore more and more and more. Soft power is not about how many enemies you succeed to kill, but soft power is about how many allies, supporters, companions you are going to gain. It is the reversal of the old logic of the military and economic competition. It is not about killing adversary, but about gaining supporters. And Joseph Nye actually draws his conclusions from the Iraq and Afghanistan escapades. Before that, still in the war in Vietnam, it shows that it achieved, the United States achieved, well, in some respects, their military purposes. Saddam Hussein was disposed of in a few days, really. From the point of view of purely military history, it was an exemplary case of successful war planning. So from the point of view of hard power, it gained its purposes quite quickly and efficiently, but on this occasion, it lost tremendous amount of its soft power because it antagonized the whole Middle East, the whole Islamic world. It actually, Saddam Hussein was removed and Taliban were defeated at the beginning because they were accused of financing Al-Qaeda, but by removing them from power, what the United States caused was creating a huge recruiting ground for Al-Qaeda and transforming international terrorism in a threat which was never before. Roughly this idea. Now, I suggest to you, ladies and gentlemen, that there is more behind what Joseph Nye has said. In fact, this kind of development was predicted already in 1980s by a great French sociologist, Pierre Bourdieu. I hope you know the name. In his study called Distinction, he suggested that we are moving from the era of normative regulation to the era of seduction. And the fight for power will be conducted in terms of tempting, seducing, very much like on computer market. On consumer market. On consumer market, you create a novelty, you create, say, an iPod or iPad with one gadget extra, and then you need to launch a seducing campaign and convince everybody around that without this extra gadget you are good for nothing, and you will be really ashamed to show yourself with this old style mobile telephone in decent company of friends. So the shift from normative regulation, from imposing certain choices upon people, to relying on temptation and seduction, on PR, public relations, on advertising, and things like that. Joseph Nye suggests, in fact, that what's happening is the acquisition of the same kind of strategy, same kind of methodology of acting, so to speak, by the state government. That they should behave very much like that. That the major issue for diplomacy, for foreign relations, and so on, is precisely that: how to tempt more and more people to agree on their will, on their free choice, what you want them to do, to accept it and to do it. And how to do it at the level of state governments, not at the level of sellers and buyers of consumer goods, by, suggest Joseph Nye, by things like impressive, seductive cultural achievements, pop music, for example, films, which sweep the whole world. Actually, America exports 80% of all films it produces, in spite of the fact that Bollywood in India is the largest producer of films, what you are normally see when you go to a cinema is an American film and not a Hindu film. Culture is one thing. Attractive culture which gets many supporters and prompts very many people to look up to the United States of America. For example, Joseph Nye is an American politician, American professor of political science, and he has the prospects of America mostly in mind. The second is political values being shown to support the governments which struggle actually to do something good for their citizens, instead of supporting autocrats, dictators of all sorts, simply because they secure quiet, law and order and obedience to certain rules set by the dominant country. And The third element, I don't know why he names it only at that point, but third element is the moral standards represented, moral authority gained by sticking to certain moral principles. In other words, military, old-fashioned kind of wars, we are suggested, are out of fashion. Even the clear-cut, the unambiguous dominance, economic dominance of one industrial power or financial power is also out of question. What Joseph Nye suggests is that it is the countries, it is the forces with the highest soft power will influence the future events. Oh, I signaled to you that I'm going one step beyond that, really. I think that the really foundational level of the present uncertainty, which has become the only certainty of the time, and the present situation in which change is the only permanent factor in our lives, derives from different sources. I think that the foundational source of this kind of a situation is what I call the divorce between power and politics. Divorce between power and politics. What is power? In the last account, what is power? In the last account, power is ability to have things done. I have power means I have the ability to do things. What is politics? Politics is the ability to decide which things ought to be done, and ability to prevent the other things from being done. That's politics. That's what politics does. In order to act effectively, you need both politics and power. And until quite recently, certainly when I was your age, it seemed absolutely obvious to everybody around that both power and politics are in the hands of the nation state. Nation state is a household, joint household of the highest level power and highest level politics. Beyond that, there is a wide west known to you from Westerns, really. Well, naked force decides about everything, but there is no order. Wild West ranchos were visited by the traveling judges only once a year or once in several years. Daily, it was just the naked coercive power to decide about things. But in orderly states, you had power and politics, and that is why the life was normal and orderly. It seemed at that time that this marriage between power and politics was made in heaven, and no human power can actually dissolve it. Since then, marriages stopped being so stable as they were then, but also the marriage between power and politics. Power in recent 30, 40, perhaps even 50 years increasingly evaporated from the level of nation state into the cyberspace. It now inhabits the area which is free from politics. The international global space is not politically regulated. Why? Because political organs, nation states, remain as local as they used to be before. Power is already global, but politics is local. And the hands of the nation states, even very powerful nation states, are not long enough to reach it. We have on the one hand, therefore, in the world, power which is not under political control, which is virtually free to do whatever it likes. And on the other hand, we have politics which suffers of the deficit of power. Not enough power. Not enough power, not enough power to undertake and perform satisfactorily all these functions which modern nation state took upon itself. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, the new big question, and that's what changed, that's new element, is no longer what is to be done. Very few people really now are engaged in thinking about the long-term future, the idea of model of society, idea of good society, which ought to be substituted for the present, which is not good enough. But if they don't think about such far-reaching plans, it is because there is the second question, which I think no one can really properly answer. And the second question is, who is going to do it? Who is going to do it? When I was your age, we all were convinced that in case we finally know what needs to be done, there will be no problem who will do it. Of course the state will do it. State has power in politics, and if we capture the state power, we will introduce whatever we think is the right thing to do. Now, however, very few people will look up and expect states to be able to deliver, Power free from political control versus politics suffering insufficiency of power. And that is the answer to the question where from interregnum comes. It is interregnum between something and between something. What the something which is still ahead is, I cannot tell you.